Border Patrol agent Thomas Vasquez knew exactly two things: where to find $27 million in cartel money and how to make someone else pay for stealing it. On October 26, 2023, Tom sent his corrupt partner, Miguel Ramos, on a fabricated assignment 20 miles away from an abandoned warehouse. What Miguel didn't know was that beneath that warehouse sat the largest cash storage facility the Hermanos del Sur cartel had ever built, and Tom was about to empty it. 12 hours later, Miguel was gone. His body was discovered showing signs of prolonged interrogation. The cartel believed Miguel had betrayed them. They were wrong. This is the story of how one man orchestrated the perfect crime and disappeared with $27 million, leaving behind a mystery that the FBI still can't solve. Before I walk you through the full story, I just have a small favor to ask. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments. What city are you watching from? It's always amazing to see how far this audience is reaching. The operation that would change Thomas Vasquez's life forever began at 10 p.m. on that October night when he sent his partner Miguel Ramos on a wild goose chase. Using his access to CBP communication systems, Tom had fabricated a report about suspicious immigrant activity in Sector Alpha 3, 20 miles away from where the real action would unfold. Migrated group spotted near the old Martinez Ranch, Tom radioed to dispatch, his voice steady despite his racing heart, requesting backup unit to investigate. He knew Miguel would volunteer for the assignment. His partner always preferred the easier patrols where he could text his cartel contacts without supervision. With Miguel safely out of the way, Tom began the final preparations for an operation he had been planning for 2 weeks. He disabled the GPS tracker in his patrol vehicle, a simple procedure he had learned during his Army service, and activated a military-grade radio jammer he had positioned near the warehouse earlier that day. The warehouse belonged to a company called Hermanos Construction, which according to public records hadn't filed a tax return in 3 years, despite claiming to operate multiple construction projects across the Southwest. But Tom knew the truth about what really operated beneath its concrete floors. At 2:45 a.m., Tom approached the warehouse on foot, having parked his vehicle half a mile away. His military training had taught him patience and precision, skills that would prove invaluable in the next few hours. Using a thermal imaging device borrowed from CBP equipment stores, he confirmed the building was empty before activating his radio jammer. The entrance to the tunnel was hidden beneath a pile of old tires behind the warehouse, a metal hatch so skillfully camouflaged that it had evaded detection by federal agents for over 2 years. Tom had discovered it by accident 3 weeks earlier, while investigating strange vibrations in the ground during his routine patrol. The tunnel itself was a marvel of criminal engineering. 20 feet below ground, the concrete-lined passage stretched for over a mile, connecting the Texas warehouse directly to a warehouse in Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. Complete with electric lighting, ventilation systems, and rails for moving cargo carts, it represented millions of dollars in construction costs and months of careful planning. But this wasn't a drug tunnel. As Tom had discovered during his weeks of surveillance, the Hermanos del Sur cartel used this passage exclusively for moving cash. Millions of dollars in drug proceeds that needed to be smuggled back to Mexico for laundering through legitimate businesses and banks. The tunnel branched into 3 sections: the main passage to Mexico, a storage area for temporary cargo holds, and a technical section housing electrical and ventilation equipment. Tom's military experience in Afghanistan, where he had specialized in clearing insurgent tunnels, had prepared him perfectly for this underground environment. The cartel's security system was sophisticated, but not insurmountable. Infrared motion detectors lined the walls, hidden cameras monitored key intersections, and sound sensors could detect unusual activity. But Tom had spent 2 weeks mapping these defenses, using equipment borrowed from CBP stores and techniques learned during his tours in Afghanistan. Moving like a ghost through the tunnel's dead zones, Tom crawled beneath camera sight lines and used temporary magnetic disruptors to blind the motion sensors. His heart pounded as he heard the sound of engines approaching from the Mexican side. The money couriers were arriving ahead of schedule. Pressing himself against the tunnel wall, Tom waited in complete darkness as 2 men drove a modified golf cart loaded with metal containers past his hiding spot. They were so close he could smell their cigarette smoke and hear them joking in Spanish about their cargo. One wrong move, one cough or stumble, and he would be dead within seconds. The storage room housed exactly what Tom had been hoping for: 18 metal containers, each marked with HTX 1027. Houston, October 27th. Inside those containers was $27 million in cash, the accumulated profits from drug sales across Houston, Dallas, and Austin over the previous month. The money was vacuum sealed in plastic wrap and bundled in stacks of $100 bills, each package weighing exactly 5 pounds. But Tom discovered something else in that underground vault that would prove even more valuable than the money itself. A separate safe contained detailed records of every corrupt official on the cartel's payroll: 3 CBP officers, including Miguel Ramos, 2 county sheriffs, and 1 federal judge. Next to each name was the exact amount of money they had received and the specific favors they had provided in return. The actual theft took over 2 hours to complete. Tom had to move the containers 3 at a time, replacing each one with an identical container filled with sand to maintain the proper weight. The process was exhausting and nerve-wracking, especially when he heard footsteps above as Mexican couriers checked the warehouse perimeter. The final phase of Tom's plan required perfect timing and flawless acting. At 5:30 a.m., he radioed CBP dispatch from his patrol vehicle. "Dispatcher, this is Patrol 7. I've discovered suspicious activity in Sector Tango 7, possible smuggling tunnel. Requesting immediate backup." The response team arrived within 20 minutes. 6 CBP agents, 2 county detectives, a bomb disposal unit, and Miguel Ramos, who had just returned from his wild goose chase. The panic in Miguel's eyes was obvious to Tom, though the other officers attributed it to the excitement of discovering such a significant smuggling operation. Tom led the team to the tunnel entrance, carefully maintaining his facade of surprise and professional duty. The explosive ordnance team sealed both ends of the tunnel with controlled detonations, officially destroying the smuggling route. The storage room was found empty. The cartel had supposedly moved their cargo before the tunnel's discovery. By 9:01 a.m., Tom was sitting in his supervisor's office, receiving praise for his vigilance and dedication. The $27 million in cash was safely hidden in a desert cache 30 miles away, and Tom had become an overnight hero in the eyes of his colleagues and superiors. Miguel Ramos had been living a double life for over 3 years, and his sudden wealth hadn't gone unnoticed by those who knew him best. On a CBP officer's salary of $65,000 per year, Miguel somehow afforded a $400,000 house, sent his 3 children to private school, and drove a luxury SUV that cost more than most people's annual income. The transformation had been gradual enough to avoid immediate suspicion. First came the new watches and jewelry, explained away as gifts from his wife's successful business. Then the home improvements: a swimming pool, professional landscaping, and a complete kitchen renovation. Miguel told colleagues his wife had received an inheritance from a deceased relative in Mexico. But Thomas Vasquez had been watching his partner carefully for months before the tunnel heist, and the evidence of corruption was overwhelming. Miguel's cell phone received encrypted text messages before every major cartel operation in their sector. His patrol reports consistently showed him avoiding certain areas at specific times. Most damning of all, he had $180,000 in cash hidden in a safety deposit box registered under his wife's maiden name. The text message that sealed Miguel's fate arrived at 11:30 p.m. on October 26th, just hours before Tom's planned heist. "Big fish swimming tomorrow night. Keep the water clean. 25K'd in the usual spot." Tom had intercepted the message using surveillance equipment borrowed from CBP stores, confirming what he had long suspected about his partner's loyalties. Miguel's corruption had started small, like most such arrangements. A cartel representative had approached him at a gas station in 2020, offering $5,000 cash for information about Border Patrol shift schedules. The money was supposed to help smuggle immigrants, not drugs. At least that's what Miguel told himself. The payments gradually increased as Miguel proved his reliability. Soon he was receiving $20,000 per month for ensuring that certain sectors remained unpatrolled during specific time windows. He convinced himself he was helping desperate families seek better lives in America, not facilitating the drug trade that was destroying communities on both sides of the border. By 2023, Miguel was earning more from cartel payments than from his government salary. He had become an essential part of the Hermanos del Sur money laundering operation, using his access to CBP systems to monitor law enforcement activities and provide advance warning of any potential threats to their operations. The irony was that Miguel's corruption had inadvertently provided Tom with the perfect cover for his theft. A corrupt partner couldn't report suspicious behavior without risking exposure of his own illegal activities. Miguel's silence had been guaranteed by his own guilt. Maria Ramos found her husband's body at exactly 7:30 a.m. on November 3, 2023. She had entered the garage to retrieve her purse from the car before leaving for her job at Laredo Community Bank, expecting to find Miguel working on his weekend project of organizing his tool collection. Instead, she discovered a scene from her worst nightmares. Miguel was suspended from the garage ceiling by industrial rope, his body showing clear signs of prolonged torture. 3 fingernails had been ripped from his fingers, burns covered his arms and chest, and his left pinky finger had been severed, a signature calling card of cartel enforcement teams. The house itself told the story of a desperate search. Every room had been systematically destroyed. Furniture was overturned, cushions slashed open, floorboards pried up, and walls torn apart. The master bedroom safe had been blown open with professional explosives, its contents scattered across the floor. In Miguel's home office, a message was spray-painted across the wall in blood-red letters. Los traidores no tienen perdón. Traitors have no forgiveness. The Laredo Police Department officially classified the incident as a home invasion robbery gone wrong, but everyone involved knew the truth. This was a cartel execution, designed to send a message to anyone else who might be tempted to betray the Hermanos del Sur organization. Detective Ray Santos, a 15-year veteran of violent crime investigations, immediately recognized the signatures of cartel enforcement. This wasn't random violence, Santos would later testify in closed hearings. Someone wanted Miguel Ramos to suffer before he died, and they wanted everyone to know why. The torture methods were textbook cartel intimidation, prolonged pain designed to extract information, followed by execution to prevent that information from being shared. The missing finger would be sent to other corrupt officials as a warning about the consequences of betrayal. What the killers had been searching for became clear when investigators discovered that Miguel's secret safe deposit box had been emptied just days before his death. Someone had withdrawn $180,000 in cash, money that represented 3 years of cartel payments for his cooperation in their smuggling operations. FBI Special Agent Sarah Chen arrived in Laredo within 48 hours of Miguel's murder, her reputation for solving complex financial crimes preceding her. With 15 years of experience investigating cartel money laundering operations, Chen immediately recognized the Miguel Ramos killing as something more than a simple enforcement action. Cartels don't torture and kill their own assets unless something has gone seriously wrong, Chen explained to local law enforcement during her initial briefing. Miguel Ramos was too valuable alive to kill him over a minor infraction. This execution suggests the cartel believes he was involved in something much bigger. Chen's investigation quickly focused on the timeline surrounding Miguel's death. The tunnel destruction had occurred on October 27th, and Miguel was killed exactly 1 week later. The cartel had clearly spent that week investigating the loss of their smuggling route and the $27 million that should have been stored there. The FBI's financial analysis revealed the scope of Miguel's corruption. Bank records showed regular cash deposits that far exceeded his government salary, always in amounts just below the $10,000 reporting threshold that would trigger federal monitoring. His wife's business accounts showed similar patterns of suspicious cash activity. But the most damning evidence came from Miguel's encrypted communications with cartel operatives. FBI cyber specialists had recovered deleted text messages that showed his deep involvement in the money smuggling operation. He had provided detailed information about Border Patrol schedules, alerted the cartel to planned enforcement actions, and even helped coordinate the timing of cash transfers through the tunnel. One recovered message, sent just hours before the tunnel's discovery, proved particularly significant. "Something feels wrong about tonight. My partner has been acting strange. Maybe we should delay the transfer." The message had been sent to a number registered to Eduardo El Tigre Morales, the leader of Hermanos del Sur. The cartel's response was swift and brutal. "Too late to change plans. If there's a problem, you better fix it. You know what happens to people who disappoint us." Thomas Vasquez was struggling with demons that had nothing to do with his recent criminal activities. His post-traumatic stress disorder, a legacy of 2 combat tours in Afghanistan, had been manageable before the tunnel heist. But the stress of living with such an enormous secret, combined with the shock of Miguel's brutal murder, pushed his psychological state to the breaking point. The nightmares came first. Instead of his usual dreams about IED explosions and Taliban fighters, Tom found himself reliving Miguel's final moments. He would wake up in cold sweats, hearing his partner's screams and seeing the cartel enforcers at work. The guilt was overwhelming. He had never intended for Miguel to die. His alcohol consumption increased dramatically. Where Tom had previously limited himself to 1 or 2 beers after difficult shifts, he was now drinking heavily every night, trying to numb the anxiety and guilt that consumed his waking hours. His supervisor noticed his deteriorating performance, but attributed it to stress over his partner's death. The panic attacks started during his 3rd week back on duty. Tom would be conducting routine patrols when suddenly his heart would race, his hands would shake, and he would struggle to breathe. The vast desert landscape that had once brought him peace now seemed threatening and hostile. His therapist at the VA hospital, Dr. Jennifer Martinez, noted significant changes in his psychological state during their weekly sessions. Tom was exhibiting classic symptoms of severe PTSD exacerbation, Dr. Martinez later testified during the federal investigation. He spoke frequently about survivors' guilt and expressed anxiety about potential threats to his safety. What Dr. Martinez didn't know was that Tom's fears were entirely rational. He had stolen $27 million from one of Mexico's most violent cartels, and they were systematically eliminating anyone who might have been involved in the theft. Miguel's death had been just the beginning. Eduardo El Tigre Morales didn't build a $500 million criminal empire by accepting losses passively. The theft of $27 million from his organization represented not just a financial blow, but a direct challenge to his authority that could encourage other acts of betrayal if left unpunished. The cartel leader convened an emergency meeting at his compound in Nuevo Laredo on November 1st, 2 days before Miguel's execution. Intelligence sources later provided details of that meeting to federal investigators, revealing the systematic approach Morales intended to take in recovering his money and punishing those responsible. $27 million doesn't just disappear, Morales told his assembled lieutenants. Someone on the American side betrayed us. Someone who knew exactly when and where that money would be stored. We're going to find them, and we're going to make an example that will be remembered for generations. The cartel's investigation began with their American assets, the corrupt officials who provided protection for their operations. Miguel Ramos was the obvious first suspect, given his access to Border Patrol information and his presence during the tunnel's discovery. His torture and execution were designed to extract any information he might have about the theft while sending a message to other corrupt officials. But Miguel's death raised more questions than it answered. Under torture, he had maintained his innocence, insisting that he knew nothing about the missing money. His phone records showed no unusual contacts in the days leading up to the tunnel's discovery. Most importantly, the $180,000 found in his safety deposit box represented years of accumulated payments, not a sudden windfall from a major theft. The cartel's next targets were the Mexican operatives who had access to the tunnel. 2 couriers who had delivered money to the storage room were found dead in Nuevo Laredo within days of Miguel's execution. A warehouse supervisor who held keys to the facility disappeared entirely, his family claiming he had fled to Central America in fear for his life. Each execution followed the same pattern: prolonged torture to extract information, followed by the signature missing finger and a message about the fate of traitors. But none of the victims provided useful information about the theft, because none of them had been involved in planning or executing it. On November 15, 2023, FBI agent Sarah Chen received an encrypted email that would fundamentally change the direction of her investigation. The message contained detailed information about corruption within Border Patrol ranks, including names, dates, and financial records that had previously been unknown to federal investigators. The email provided a comprehensive list of corrupt officials on the cartel payroll: 3 CBP officers, 2 county sheriffs, 15 municipal police officers, and 1 federal judge. Next to each name was documented evidence of their corruption: specific amounts received, services provided, and even photographs of cash exchanges. Most significantly, the email included financial records from the cartel's own accounting system, showing exactly how much each corrupt official had been paid over the previous 3 years. The total amount exceeded $2.3 million, representing one of the largest corruption networks ever documented along the Texas-Mexico border. The source of the information was completely untraceable, The email had been sent through multiple proxy servers and encrypted using military-grade software. Even the FBI's most sophisticated cyber investigation units were unable to determine its origin. But the information was absolutely authentic. When FBI agents began arresting the named officials, they found evidence that corroborated every detail in the anonymous tip. Safety deposit boxes contained exactly the amounts of cash specified in the leaked documents. Phone records confirmed the dates of contact with cartel representatives. In several cases, the arrested officials confessed immediately when confronted with such precise evidence of their crimes. The operation, designated Clean Border by federal authorities, resulted in the largest corruption takedown in Border Patrol history. Within 2 weeks, the entire cartel protection network in South Texas had been dismantled, leaving Hermanos del Sur operations completely exposed to law enforcement scrutiny. Agent Chen's investigation into the tunnel heist was becoming increasingly focused on Thomas Vasquez, though she still lacked concrete evidence linking him to the theft. His military background was particularly troubling. Tom's service record showed extensive experience with explosives, tunnel clearing operations, and small unit tactics that would have been invaluable for such a sophisticated operation. The timing of various events also created a suspicious pattern. Tom had been working alone in Sector Tango 7 on the night of the heist, having sent his partner Miguel on a false alarm call to a different sector. The tunnel's discovery had come exactly at the optimal time, after the money transfer, but before Mexican operatives could respond to the theft. Most concerning was Tom's behavior in the weeks following Miguel's murder. Colleagues reported that he seemed increasingly paranoid and jumpy, avoiding social interactions and requesting solo patrol assignments. His supervisor noted that Tom had been asking unusual questions about federal investigation procedures and the statute of limitations for various federal crimes. Chen decided to apply psychological pressure through repeated interviews, hoping Tom might reveal information that could confirm or eliminate him as a suspect. "Tom, your military record shows extensive tunnel experience in Afghanistan," she said during one particularly tense session. "You've got explosive ordnance training, small unit tactics, and experience operating in underground environments. That's an unusual skill set for a Border Patrol agent." Tom's responses were carefully controlled, but Chen noticed subtle signs of stress, increased perspiration, slight tremors in his hands, and a tendency to over-explain simple answers. His attorney, provided by the CBP union, advised him to limit his responses to direct questions only. The financial investigation revealed that Tom was facing severe personal financial pressures that could provide motive for such a theft. His divorce settlement required $1,200 monthly alimony payments, and his ex-wife was threatening to restrict his visitation rights with their daughter unless he could demonstrate improved financial stability. Medical records from the VA hospital showed that Tom's PTSD treatment was costing $400 per month, and he had accumulated over $23,000 in credit card debt. For someone earning $65,000 annually as a federal agent, these financial pressures were overwhelming. Tom's greatest vulnerability wasn't his financial desperation or his military training. It was his 7-year-old daughter, Sophia. His ex-wife, Laura, had been using their child as leverage in their ongoing disputes over money and custody, and Tom would do anything to ensure he could remain part of Sophia's life. The divorce had been finalized just 18 months earlier, but the emotional wounds were still fresh. Laura had cited Tom's drinking, his nightmares, and his increasing isolation as reasons why he was an unfit father. The court had granted him supervised visitation rights only, and those were contingent on his maintaining stable housing and employment. In September 2023, just weeks before the tunnel heist, Laura's attorney had sent Tom a letter demanding an additional $15,000 in back support payments. The letter threatened to petition the court for complete termination of his parental rights if he couldn't demonstrate financial stability and responsible behavior. For Tom, the threat was worse than any physical torture the cartel might devise. Sophia was the only bright spot in his increasingly dark world, and the possibility of losing her entirely was unbearable. The money from the tunnel heist would solve his immediate financial problems, but more importantly, it would allow him to create a long-term trust fund that could support Sophia for the rest of her life. In the weeks following the heist, Tom had carefully improved his financial situation, using only small amounts from his cash. He increased his alimony payments to Laura by $500 per month, caught up on his $23,000 in credit card debts using $25,000 from the stash, and opened a college savings account for Sophia with an initial $10,000 deposit. When Laura asked about his improved circumstances, Tom explained that he had received a promotion and was working overtime shifts. The lie came easily, but living with it was becoming increasingly difficult. Every time Tom saw Sophia, he was reminded that their improved relationship was built on money stolen from murderers and drug dealers. He bought her new clothes and toys with clean money from his legitimate paychecks. But he couldn't escape the knowledge that her future security would depend on the cartel's blood money hidden in the desert. "Daddy, why do you look so sad all the time?" Sophia asked during one of their supervised visits to the park. Tom had no answer that a 7-year-old could understand. How could he explain that he had become the very type of criminal he had spent his career fighting? By mid-November 2023, Tom realized that both the FBI and the cartel were closing in on him from different directions. Agent Chen's questions were becoming more specific and harder to deflect, while the cartel's execution of Mexican operatives suggested they were systematically eliminating everyone with access to their operation. The breaking point came on November 18th when Tom received an unexpected visit at his apartment. Maria Ramos, Miguel's widow, appeared at his door at 10:30 p.m., her eyes red from crying and her hands shaking with grief and terror. "They came to my house tonight," she whispered, looking over her shoulder as if expecting to be followed. "Two men. They asked about Miguel's American friends. They wanted to know about his partner. About you." Maria explained that the cartel enforcers had questioned her about Tom's relationship with Miguel, his military background, and whether Miguel had ever mentioned anything suspicious about his partner's behavior. They had shown her photographs of Miguel's torture and execution, making clear that similar treatment awaited anyone who withheld information. "I told them Miguel never talked about work at home," Maria continued, "but they didn't believe me. They said they would be back, and next time they would bring tools to help me remember." The message was clear. The cartel suspected Tom's involvement in the theft, and they were prepared to torture Miguel's family members to extract information. Maria begged Tom to go to the FBI for protection, but they both knew that would mean admitting his guilt and facing federal prosecution. That night, Tom made his final decision. He could not allow Maria and her children to be tortured because of his crime, and he could not continue living with the constant fear of discovery. He would have to disappear entirely, leaving behind everything he had ever known to protect the innocent people whose lives his theft had endangered. Tom's military training had included escape and evasion techniques, knowledge that would prove invaluable as he planned his disappearance from the United States. He had 3 advantages over typical fugitives: his access to official government systems, his knowledge of border security procedures, and contacts from his Army service who could provide assistance without asking too many questions. The first step was retrieving the $27 million from his desert cache. Over 3 careful trips in the weeks following Miguel's murder, Tom had moved the money from its initial hiding place to a more secure location, an abandoned mine shaft 50 miles into the Chihuahuan desert that he had discovered during training exercises years earlier. The second step was obtaining clean identification documents. Staff Sergeant Danny Johnson, who had served with Tom in Afghanistan, now worked as a civilian contractor specializing in document security. For $25,000 cash from his stash, Johnson provided Tom with a complete identity package: driver's license, social security card, passport, and birth certificate for Miguel Ramirez, a fictional persona with a carefully constructed background. Converting the stolen money into manageable assets required careful planning. Tom kept $3 million in physical cash for immediate needs and transportation. Another $2 million was converted into gold coins and bars through precious metals dealers across Texas, small transactions that wouldn't trigger reporting requirements. He established multiple cryptocurrency wallets containing $1.5 million in Bitcoin, creating a digital nest egg accessible from anywhere in the world. The most complex part of the plan involved the remaining $20.5 million. Working with offshore financial specialists recommended by his Army contacts, Tom created an intricate web of shell companies and trust funds. The largest portion, $15 million, was placed in investment accounts designed to generate steady returns for decades. These funds would provide ongoing support for Sophia and finance his anonymous charitable activities. The remaining $5.5 million was distributed across various purposes. $3 million for Sophia's long-term education and living expenses, $1.5 million for anonymous donations to veterans organizations and families of fallen Border Patrol agents, and $1 million as an emergency reserve for unforeseen circumstances. Tom established the payments to Sophia through what appeared to be a legitimate educational foundation. The monthly $3,000 transfers would seem to come from scholarship funds, and even sophisticated federal investigations would struggle to trace them back to their actual source through the maze of offshore entities and shell companies. Tom's escape route had been planned with meticulous attention to detail. He would drive his personal vehicle to Nuevo Laredo, cross the border using his CBP credentials one final time, then abandon the car and continue south through Mexico using public transportation. From there, he would fly to Belize, a country that required no visa for American tourists and had a large community of English-speaking expatriates. On November 20th, 2023, Tom took Sophia to dinner at her favorite restaurant, a small Mexican place where they served the cheesy quesadillas she loved and always gave her extra rice and beans. He had told Laura it was a special celebration dinner for his recent promotion at work, though the real reason was far more heartbreaking. Sitting across from his daughter in the red vinyl booth, Tom memorized every detail of her face, the way she wrinkled her nose when she laughed, the gap between her front teeth, the serious expression she got when concentrating on cutting her food. He knew he might never see her again, and the knowledge was almost unbearable. "Daddy has to go away for work," he told her as gently as possible. "It's going to be a long assignment, maybe in another country. But I want you to know that I'll think about you every single day, and I'll always love you more than all the stars in the sky." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "But I don't want you to go away. Can't you get a different job?" Tom gave her a small jewelry box containing a silver locket with their photograph inside. "Whenever you miss me, you can look at this picture and remember that Daddy is always with you in your heart, and the money will keep coming every month to help pay for school and all the things you need." That night, Tom wrote Sophia a letter to be delivered on her 18th birthday. "My dearest Sophia, by the time you read this, you'll be old enough to understand that sometimes people have to make difficult choices to protect the people they love. I took money from very bad people to make sure you would have everything you needed for a good life. I couldn't let you grow up poor like I did, struggling and worried about the future. I hope someday you can forgive me for leaving. And I hope you understand that every decision I made was because I love you more than life itself. Your Daddy, who will always be watching over you." At 11:30 p.m. on November 20th, 2023, Thomas Vasquez walked out of his apartment for the last time, carrying only a single duffel bag containing essential supplies and travel documents. Hidden in the bag's false bottom were $200,000 in cash, gold coins worth another $150,000, and access codes to cryptocurrency wallets containing $1.5 million. He left behind a carefully staged scene designed to suggest a spontaneous departure, clothes scattered around the bedroom, dirty dishes in the sink, and his CBP uniform hanging in the closet as if he intended to return for his next shift. The drive to his desert cache took 2 hours through empty highways. At the abandoned mine shaft, Tom retrieved the main portion of his stolen fortune, $24 million in cash that had been vacuum sealed and stored in waterproof containers. Working quickly in the darkness, he loaded the money into specially modified compartments in a stolen pickup truck he had prepared weeks earlier. The journey to the border crossing point took another hour. Tom had chosen the checkpoint carefully, a small facility where he was known to the guards and where his CBP credentials would provide unquestioned access. At 3:15 a.m. on November 21st, he used his official identification to cross into Mexico for the final time, telling the border guard he was pursuing smugglers who had fled across the border. In Nuevo Laredo, Tom executed the final phase of his financial plan. Over the course of 6 hours, he visited 8 different banks and money transfer services, converting $20 million of the cash into wire transfers directed to the offshore accounts he had established. The remaining $4 million in physical cash was divided between multiple safety deposit boxes, rented under various false identities, creating emergency funds he could access if needed. By noon, Tom had abandoned the pickup truck in a busy market district and transformed himself into Miguel Ramirez. The man who boarded a bus to Mexico City carried only a single backpack containing $50,000 in cash, clean identification documents, and the clothes on his back. The transformation was complete. New name, new appearance thanks to a hastily grown beard and different clothing style, and a new future in a country where careful financial planning could buy complete invisibility. From Mexico City, Miguel Ramirez flew to Belize City using a ticket purchased with cash. His cover story was simple: a construction worker who had saved money to start a small business in the tourism industry. The $27 million theft had been converted into a sustainable new life. Investment accounts that would generate steady income for decades, trust funds that would support his daughter's future, and enough liquid assets to live comfortably while maintaining a low profile. The FBI investigation would continue for months, following false leads and dead ends across multiple countries. Agent Shen would eventually conclude that Thomas Vasquez had most likely been killed by the cartel and his body disposed of in the Mexican desert. His disappearance would be classified as a casualty of the border violence that claimed dozens of lives every year. But in the tropical paradise of Belize, Miguel Ramirez would begin a new life as a diving instructor in San Pedro, living off investment returns while sending anonymous monthly payments to a little girl in Texas. The stolen millions would fund not just his comfortable exile, but also a carefully managed program of charitable giving, donations to veterans organizations, scholarships for children of fallen Border Patrol agents, and support for families affected by cartel violence. It was Tom's way of balancing the moral scales, using money stolen from evil to support those fighting against it. The $27 million would be spent over the years on quiet philanthropy, transforming drug money into something approaching redemption. The tunnel beneath the Texas desert had been destroyed. Its concrete walls collapsed and its secrets buried forever. But the man who had walked through its depths and emerged with a fortune had learned that some prices are too high to pay, and some victories come at the cost of everything that makes them worthwhile.